Whether you love it or hate it, Fallout 76 has one of the biggest explorable game environments in the entire series. In Fallout 76's game map, there are unmarked locations and Easter eggs that even to this day, after its release in 2018, people still don't know about. But before we go exploring, folks, I just want to say if you do like what I do, then please like this video and subscribe. So without further ado, let us get into the video. Now, for our first location, we'll be traveling north of the East Mountain Lookout in the Savage Divide. Now, spawning in, we can see the remains of a rather explosive scene involving some settlers and heavy ordnance. Now, moving past these unfortunate settlers, we can move along the cliffside to our location, but it does have to be said, it's exploring these parts of Appalachia that really makes you appreciate the views you can have. Now, eventually we will walk across a very strange stone arch that I've nicknamed the Stone Gate. The location doesn't offer much other than a brilliant view of Watoga, I might say, a random encounter spawn point, and a mysterious skeleton. Now, it has to be said, who is this mysterious skeleton? Is he or she perhaps the creator of the stone arch? Now, I'm afraid I'll have to leave that up to you. Now, our next location is called the Dump Truck Hideout. Now, to travel there, we will have to travel due north from our previous destination at the Stone Gate until we can head to the cliff edge. Looking over the cliffside, we can see what looks like a modified home built out of a rather large dump truck. Heading closer, we can see that a firefight has broken out between a super mutant and a pack of Liberator assault robots. Now, folks, I was astonished to see this poor super mutant just get absolutely vaporized, but in general, it just means that we have an easier task of clearing the homestead. Now, like the Stone Gate, this is also a random encounter hotspot, so for my gameplay, I found a super mutant and some liberators, but you might find other things like Scorched or feral ghouls in your gameplay. Moving into the home, we find a rather creative homestead that has been built with the owner mysteriously missing. Exploring the homestead, we find a tinkerer's workbench, and the back of the dump truck has been turned into a very own bedroom. Now, it must be said that whoever built this home was indeed prepared, because we do find a Mark 5 turret, at least in my gameplay, which was very finicky to get rid of. I would advise lower level people to stick at this from range rather than using melee weapons. Now, the question has to be asked, folks, who built this modified truck home? Was the truck here pre-war? And if so, why? And one thing that struck me, does this have any connection to the Stone Gate and the skeleton not a stone's throw away, if you'll excuse the pun? Much like the past two unmarked locations, we will be traveling even further due north until we find the nearest electrical tower looming in the distance. We are on the very border of the mire as we travel in at this point, and we can see the climate take on a more green shade. Traveling to the pylon, we will need to head eastwards of the electrical tower into the clearing of trees that stands on the edge of the mire. Getting closer, we can find an absolutely bizarre scene. In the middle of the clearing, we find a whole host of skeletons wearing witch hats, incredibly. So from investigating the site, it appears to be a Halloween party. An empty bottle of Nuka-Shine lies by the scene, indicating that they must have had a pretty good time, all being said. Now, at the center of this Halloween bonanza, a skull shrine lies at the center of the picnic blanket that these partygoers must have used for decoration. Now, it is possible that these young partygoers went to Freddy Fiz's House of Scares, which also borders the Savage Divide and the mire to the north. Now, drinking from late until early morning I can understand, but all the way until like 9 o'clock in the morning is very strange indeed. Now, regarding this, I propose a different theory. Now, given when the player drinks Nuka-Shine, we do pass out and basically spawn in another part of the map. My theory for this is that they drank the Nuka-Shine the night before, passed out, and were still asleep by the time of the Great War. Now, this would explain why they were still in party dress-up by the time of the morning, and overall is not a bad way to go given the circumstances. Well, I guess beggars can't be choosers after all, so I guess we'll leave these hip young people to their eternity of boozing. Now, moving on folks, we will be moving back to the electrical tower as our next location will be following the power lines, at least for this unmarked location, a place I like to call the Beaver Ambush. Making our way down the hill, we wade through seemingly the biggest clearings for the mire given its location, seeing a foundation for the next electrical pylon in the distance. Walking up, we see a familiar sight from the last one we left, more pre-war skeletons and beavers? Now, for one thing, we know that this is a pre-war scene because of the flatbed truck that is parked rather clumsily at the foot of the pylon. Now, first of all, I have to ask, why were these campers hiking out beneath this tower? Did they die in the war? Or perhaps they were ambushed, caught off guard by some buck-toothed scoundrels? Now, it could be theorized that maybe these beavers took back their land and ghoulified. Though I'm sad to say that the truth may be sealed to time, with all that's left being to leave the beavers to their spoils. Carrying on, our next location is called the Collapsed Train Tunnel, and it is situated southeast of our camper's graveyard. Travelling through the mire, the foliage starts to thicken as we spot a train line in the distance and what seems to be a structure of some kind. Getting closer. It seems the Blood Eagles have recently taken over a seemingly hidden settler home. Now, we are too late to save the settlers, however, we can make sure that these raiders don't hurt anyone ever again. Wiping out the Blood Eagles, we can have a proper look at this settler hideout. Now, all in all, the structure is balanced against the train cars, the tunnel for which has completely collapsed. The settler home isn't anything special, with some containers and food, but nothing out of the ordinary. Now, it's very interesting, the settlers' bodies are still here, which leads me to believe that all of the fortifications were made by them, rather than the Blood Eagles. Well, I gotta say, it's a good thing we've cleared out the raiders, so maybe another band of settlers can find this home and make it theirs. So, leaving the train car to the elements, we can travel north. Walking along, we can find a scientist's shack. Now, folks, this is a bizarre pre-war structure with a chain-link fence surrounding a makeshift shack, one that is infested with ticks. Now folks, if you are trying to collect acid for the daily challenges, this is a great location for doing so. Wiping out every last insect, we can finally explore this scientist's makeshift shack. So investigating the home, we see a unique scene shown before us. Now we find some high-tech furniture. At the end of the shack is the scientist's quarters with a bed and a television, and following back we see an opening for whatever this thing is. Now, it seems that whatever this mad scientist was working on, he was interrupted by these insects, or maybe the scientist was caught up in the war and the ticks made it their new home. Honestly, who's to say? All I know is that there were some pretty strange and weird people in the pre-war swamps of Appalachia. Oh, way down south, a land of traitors, rattlesnakes and alligators. Now, next to the scientist's shack is a road we can once again use to travel northwards. Doing so, we find a very strange orange glow in the distance. Moving up to the light, we can find an elevated grotto, next to which is a ruined police car. Now, moving up to the grotto, we find two other skeletons, one by the road, seemingly running away, and the other by a strew of fortifications. Now folks, you gotta watch out here, there are some punji boards that are still placed after 200 years, and knowing my luck, I stepped on them without even noticing. Now, my question here is, what on earth happened? Now, perhaps this might link into the various anti-establishment views that were found in the Maya and by proxy, the Free States. Now, the skeletons are either here from the Great War or a scene that played out just before. Now, my bet, given that the fortifications are still up and the skeletons are on there, that there was some kind of altercation before the Great War, maybe some pre-state aligned group was holding out and the police were sent in to quell the rebellion. Now, whatever the case, this poor patrolman was blown back onto the hood of his car, even still wearing his patrolman sunglasses. Well, I guess things weren't all peaches and cream in pre-war Appalachia. So for our last unmarked location, we will be following the road past the Hillbilly's last stand we just investigated up to the T-junction. Now you'll want to ignore both roads on this junction and travel straight into the forest and up the hill. Walking through the brush, we find perhaps one of my favorite unmarked locations in this video. Even if it's a random encounter, I still love it. We find a huge ditch with barrels seemingly containing pre-war money. With the ditch, we can find the skeleton of a pre-war scientist, his shovel close by. For those cultured individuals, this is most likely a reference to the hit TV series Breaking Bad. In the series, the main character, Walter White, a scientist, buries his fortunes in barrels and buries them in the middle of nowhere. Now, if this isn't an Easter egg, then one explanation could be made due to the close proximity of the Sugar Grove Intelligence Center, the back fence of which is a short walk southwest of the scientist's ditch. Maybe our lab-coated friend stole some money in secret and was planning to use it for later, only to get caught in the blast of the Great War, and tragically died before he could spend his already inflated dollars. Now, that being said, either way, I can certainly salute this man's gumption in the twilight of pre-war America. And there we have it, folks, a brief handful of unmarked locations that I have found in Fallout 76. If you like what I do, then please like this video and subscribe, it means the world. My name has been Dr. Wasabi, I bid you a most pleasant good morning, good evening, or good night, and of course, as always, God bless.
Executing hold-up procedure. Drop everything you got, friend. Nice and easy. This is a stick-up.